Hi everyone, my name is Anshin Kelly. I'm an intuitive healer and traditional midwife. Right now I am nursing a baby, and so you might have a little wiggling and maybe see a little hand here. I would like to begin by saying that I had 5 natural births, and 4 of them were free births, which means there was no medical professional or midwife at the births. You are watching Freebirth Midwifery, and today I'd like to talk to you guys about the power of free birth and its ability to ignite. And I guess the first question would be, you're asking is ignite what? And so the 3 things that I would like to talk about today is that free birth has the power to ignite. Number 1, selfless love. Selfless love. Number 2, accountability and responsibility. And number 3, new hope. Overall and in general, in the modern Western culture, the attitude towards natural birth, which is it's not just unmedicated birth. Natural birth is getting closer, getting back to original birth. All around the world, terminologies like free birth or home birth or natural birth, they are considered modern terminology because they are. Still, all around the world, women give birth naturally and without assistance and all kinds of things. And for the vast majority of the time, there is no issue. Western media and the Western medicalized culture for hundreds of years, has done a number on the perception and perspective of Western modern people on childbirth and what that is like in the rest of the world. In many places in the world still, childbirth is just childbirth. There isn't any delineation or categorization because, well, this is how women and babies have managed to bring new life into the world since time out of mind. The general attitude towards natural birth, and not to mention home birth or free birth with the modern Western world, is still very suspicious. Everything from fearful to suspicious to downright vicious. I've talked about those modern, especially in my experience, overall modern women's attitude towards natural birth, home birth, and free birth. And I've also talked about as of late that there has become a boom. It's almost like modern women are creating a realm in which they can kind of have their cake and eat it too, where they're either bringing the hospital to their home in a way, having very medicalized births at home so they can sort of have an unmedicated, natural birth. But a lot of times there's really not really anything natural about it. And then on top of that, I talked about in my last video how there's been an overall concern among natural birth workers that often becomes overwhelmed by worry that we won't be able to sustain this work financially without getting on social media. And so so-called natural birth has become Instagramized. And there really isn't anything overall natural about Instagram birth, even if the woman is giving birth unmedicated. The very act of having one's birth online as a premeditated, especially as a premeditated, and I say that because tons and tons of women now, it seems, it's become very trendy to not only put your birth online, but it's premeditated. This has been planned from the beginning, and the women will cover their breasts during the most intense part of labor in order to put their birth online. And my point is that the focus is all wrong. I am not against putting your birth online or publicizing your birth, if that's what you want to do, but the focus is all wrong. And then in the birth culture, birth being at the center of life itself and womankind, and overall, the natural birth culture and sort of natural movement or alternative movement in a lot of ways has succumbed overall to a lot of the same kind of problems that there were before: worry, fear, anxiety, suspicions about natural practices, ancient practices, and of course the abandonment or fear of woman to woman community connection and support, which is going to require for women to be vulnerable and open and to, God forbid, grow with one another and focus on their families and on themselves. We can sustain financially, but we can't really do it on an actual deep fundamental level. The whatever financial sustainability that we have at this point in the game, in the over medicalized, over social mediaized culture, we're not going to be able to sustain overall if that is our focus in order to gain a step up or publicity and in a faster way, in a quicker way, what we deem better. The only real sustainability that there is in this world overall, and I come from an international culture, international community, and all around the world, of course, people are deeply influenced by modern Western culture, which is a self-gratifying culture. It's a culture that is a me now, individualistic culture. Its focus is not on community, and I speak fundamentally now about womankind, our woman to woman community connection and support, and recognizing and understanding ourselves as the foundations of life itself, being the main bequesters of legacy for the generations to come. But all around the world, especially in unbroken traditional cultures, the family, the community, centered on soulful practices that recognize a higher force, a higher source of love, and that is selfless love. And now more than ever, we are seeing the fallouts of a very unsustainable culture in the modern West and modern Western influence all around the world, where the focus is on the individual, and the focus, instead of the individual being a unique part of a whole, we are all encouraged to be, in a way, especially with women, the narrative of being a little obsessed with your choices, where life isn't about choice. Life is a good start. It's a good start. Yeah, it's good to have choice, but life isn't about choice. If it were, then we would choose the vast majority of things in our life, and we just simply don't. And we are better for it. We didn't choose to be born. We didn't choose for the sun to come up every day or go down every day. We didn't choose the laws of physics or biological law or even spiritual law. We don't choose that. Okay, we are participants in an ancient universe. Something that we can choose and that we should choose. And if we don't, then we will later on, even if we don't see it immediately, even if we don't see it in the first many decades. Trust me, I've met many people now. 20, 30, 35 years down the road, they didn't get to see the fallouts of their unfocused minds and hearts, um, that were clinging to and putting vast importance in modern narratives about so-called choice and about so-called individualistic desires that take precedence over the understanding of the whole, and how selfless love is at the center and core of that. How does free birth have the power to ignite selfless love? Free birth especially in the modern Western realm, is a decision that is made through a deeper calling. Often, women are not going to be able to just willy-nilly post this on the internet. They're going to have to be careful. There are a lot of modern Western forces that have been around for hundreds of years, that have their origins since the time that Christianized, I should say, I've been saying the European version that was of Christianizing of ways of thinking about the family or women, especially children. And fundamentally, some of those philosophies, we are seeing the detriment of the philosophy, not as a faith, not as a faith with universal divine principles in it, but Christianizing used as a philosophy to ultimately diminutize the sacred feminine from culture. And when you diminutize the sacred feminine from culture, and you put the masculine divinity at the center, one and only, then you're going to have trouble, because all human beings descend from women. We all come from women. So to practice for hundreds of years a diminutizing of the sacred feminine and the all-powerful centralizing of the divine masculine, you're going to have imbalance. I mean, major imbalance. The very biological and spiritual essence of what it means to be a woman in this day and age is under severe assault and attack. And honestly, if you have a solid, good overall knowledge of what has happened in the course of the last just few hundred years, ancient cultures all over the world that are, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years old, have been all but wiped out, and at the very least damaged, just in the last few hundred years, with philosophies that, as I said, that are not rooted in faith or the sacredness of faith, but they are rooted in using the doctrines of a certain philosophy or faith to seize control. And so my point being that the very act of a woman to decide in a society like this that has been built up to this point, to decide that she wants to give birth on her own because she is capable, that she knows that she is capable, that she is called forth by something deeper than her own immediate desires or her own immediate fleeting feelings of insecurity or fear, that she is tapping into something that is very ancient and very universal and very fundamental to humankind. You have to start seeing history for what it is, and that there is continuity in history, that this is going to be a great segue into accountability, the next one, igniting accountability, that there is a collective, that collective accountability is actually, in a lot of ways, a lot more powerful and a lot more fundamental than individual accountability. A person who can see themselves as a collective and to understand collective accountability within their group, within whatever it is, within their racial group, their religious group, that's a powerful person. And that person then actually has a sense of personal accountability that is more powerful than even a person who has managed to have at least personal accountability. The free birthing woman, the existence of the free birthing woman can ignite selfless love. Selfless love is also known as unconditional love or true love. It is an unchanging, eternal, ferocious, and relentless love. It is a love from which all things pulsate from. It is the origin of all life itself. And its manifestation is seen, I think, most of all and most powerfully all over the world in the timeless imagery of mother and child, and that is no coincidence. To, as a woman, to give birth to new life. Our culture of choices, our culture of individualistic thinking and individualistic desires has also tried to cut out the fundamental energy of selfless love in pregnancy and birth and becoming and in motherhood. The fact is, the laws of physics and the law and spiritual laws and the laws of your hormonal systems, and not to mention all the amazing life forces built into the placenta, the womb, your other reproductive organs, the umbilical cord, and the baby itself. We don't have a whole lot of choice without enormous consequence if we try to mess around with it, which over medicalized childbirth has done. I've worked with women and their health, and their childbearing journeys, their childbirthing journeys, and their motherhood journeys for over 15 years. And women are not safer. They are not safer in a medicalized birthing culture, not by a long shot. They might be able to say even have 3 or 4 children getting epidurals and having one cesarean. But later on down the line, there are more often than not health issues. Uterine trauma, the fallouts of uterine trauma are on the rise that give way to a fundamental weakening sense inside women of not being able to have a foundation within and unto themselves. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. America is the only developed country with a rising maternal mortality rate. And 1/3 of our births are cesareans. And cesarean sections are no joke. I've seen the uterine trauma that I speak of that is widespread, very widespread. And I think that the postpartum depression and the lack of community and the fear of woman to woman intimacy. And I'm not talking about sexuality here. I'm talking just sexual desire here. Another thing our culture has is an obsession with sexual desire. Intimacy is not just sexual desire. Intimacy is so much more than before that. And woman to woman intimacy is an emotional support system that has very little to do with sexual desire. Wherever sexual desire plays a role, that is maybe secondary. Sexual desire is a good example of this culture of choices, like being in a candy store, and having all the choices before you, that this is the most important thing somehow. that choices and desire somehow make the world go round. Which is, if anyone were to just sit down with themselves in an actual accountable and reflective way, they would see, or just be out in nature more, be out in nature and have a day-to-day relationship with nature. One would see that the world does not spin according to one's desires and choices. The world spins according to a powerful higher power that is called by many names, and one of those is selfless love. A love that is not full of self. And what does that mean? What is the self that I'm talking about? The self that I'm talking about is the self that human beings, part of the human condition since time out of mind, is that human beings have identified with this self that is made up essentially of sort of a bag of, it's like a bag of emotions and psychological responses and thoughts and opinions, and not to mention the desires of the physical body, the not instincts, the biological functions of the physical body, and that is not to say that the emotions or the intellect or the body are bad and they should be done away with. Far from it. But the body and the intellect and the emotions, and the psyche are supposed to be intimately and deeply attached to um, something that is sometimes called the spiritual placenta. What is that spiritual placenta and that spiritual umbilical cord, that attaches the entire being, smaller being, more outer being or external being or mental being to selfless love, to the soul, to a higher intelligence, to a deeper instinct. Free birth has the power to ignite accountability. Um, Ignite personal accountability, yeah, but also to ignite collective accountability, even in a more powerful way than even personal accountability. That you have this personal accountability that then is like a small pilot light, a powerful pilot light that ignites a greater flame that builds a hearth and a home and a fireplace for that greater flame to be able to fill a house, a community, a culture with warmth and the ability to thrive and heal and to see with clarity. The flame is the truth. And then also to be able to, fire has this capability and this role of being able to properly cook food, which is a symbol of nourishment. This ability to actually take in nourishing thoughts, nourishing philosophies, and also fire speaks of, to be able to ignite the soul fire, it speaks of also this ability to understand selfless love within its deeper principles of sacred boundaries, sacred boundary making, and the taking down of boundaries that shouldn't be there, that aren't sacred, that are there to keep out when they should be, to keep out the soul, essentially, to keep out the full truth. As a free birthing woman, you're able to, who is fully committed and devoted to that act. You are, in a sense, in a deep sense, in a profound sense, you are creating an anchor point for first women, and then our children, our families, and our communities. You're creating a spiritual, powerful anchor point that may not be seen or fully understood by those around you, especially in our culture, but nonetheless know that it is there. at some point the anxious language, whether it's the language of the mainstream, that whatever it is, that midwives are not qualified unless they are essentially, they're essentially doctors, that hospitals are the only way, the medical culture is the only way to legitimize the ancient practices of healing in midwifery, because that's the real thing. I mean, the end of the road is coming up, where the sidewalk ends when it comes to those narrations that have been around for a very long time now. But not the point is not as long as ancient practices. Ancient practices have been around much longer, and it's just that the broken record or narration that has come about through the trauma of the diminutizing and abusing and neglecting and routing out, in a not a good way, routing out of the sacred feminine in Western culture. And now women have fallen prey, I feel, in modern Western culture. They've fallen prey to the same worry, the same anxiety, the same trauma, where, in order to what it boils down to is, in order to be more accepted or seem more acceptable to the outer community, and then unfortunately then it becomes just about maintaining the bottom line and surviving financially. Then all those pitfalls, they all meet in the same place. It doesn't matter what label you put on it. You could put natural, you could put organic, you could put alternative, you can put sacred feminine, you can put whatever you want on it, whatever label on it. If it's not it, if it looks like it but is not it, then it's not it. It took me 15 years, maybe my whole life, but at least the last 15 years, to fully come to realize that women in our culture, they want everything, but what is going to make everything happen? They want the natural in a lot of ways. They want whatever level that is. They want to be able to make a path, an emotional and cultural path that is better and healthier for women and children. They want all that. They want family, you know. But the thing is, we actually don't see that happening. We don't actually see that manifesting because the essential ingredient is missing. That essential ingredient is the igniting of the soul, which has contained within it, first and foremost, selfless love and accountability. And the way one creates legacy is through the healing of culture, and one does not heal culture unless one is able to endure and to become resilient in the difficult journey of healing, um, back to true intimacy, in woman to woman community connection and support. That is the foundation of family and of legacy. New hope can only be born, truly. These children that are being born, they're able to have natural births. They're able to be more connected. They're not being bombarded first thing coming into the world, with over medicalized practices and injections of different drugs into the system to try to force the birth to go a certain way. These children that are able to come into the world this way, um, even their journeys are getting wicked away now because of the social media culture, because of the concern that, well, the natural way, the actual original natural way, which is the ancient instinct, which is the ancient woman, isn't enough. isn't acceptable and isn't going to bring in the money and isn't going to protect our bottom line. I know that's difficult to hear, but that's where it's at. And that's because deep on the inside, we haven't first inspected closely what is our relationship first and foremost to our souls, which is the center of selfless love. What is therefore our attitude or ability or understanding with accountability, collective and individual, and our insatiable desire to bring forth new hope, isn't going to be satiated until we are examining the central force from which all life, and we are not. If it's not going to be satiated until we are accountable to the central force from which all life comes, and that is a force that is ourselves, but it is greater than ourselves, so much greater than ourselves. We do not feel the light overall of new hope in our cultures, especially in womankind, in Western modern womankind. We don't feel the new hope that we hoped would come because all of our efforts, our overall efforts, all of our life force is being poured into externalized solution, and we are running away. We're running away from closely examining the internal problem, which is the harder thing, but it's the only thing that's going to get us there, truly get us there. It's truly going to satiate our longing for a better way, for a better day for women and children in North America. We must be able to give up control. This desire and this need to control. Sorry, I had a little adjusting to do here. Control our environments or what we think is important. Okay, we need to start tapping into a greater reality, a greater life force. We need to first and foremost begin to see, in order to manifest a new hope and truly manifest a new hope in a spiritual and physical way. We need to be able to see that our problems are first and foremost of an internal matter, not an external matter. And the existence of free birth all around the world, but I especially talk about North America and our need for it in our culture. A free birth is a powerful place to start for women's beginning, women's healing, women's profound addressing of internal matters within herself, and what that means when it comes to bringing forth and bequesting legacy into the world. Free birth can help to just clear out all the extras, all the distractions, all the things that we think we need, and help us to see where truly life begins, and therefore where legacy is extended from, where legacy is manifested from, and where new hope blooms forth from.